If you listen closely enough to a server rack, you can hear it breathing. It's a low, desperate hum, a fan blade rattle that sounds like a chain smoker jogging up a flight of stairs. And for the last 8 years, that sound has been my only consistent conversation partner. I'm the reason you can buy a gallon of milk at 2 a.m. in Topeka without the register screaming an error code at you. I'm the reason the credit card readers don't turn into paperweights every time it rains in Seattle. If you've ever felt like the only person holding up the sky while everyone else is busy picking out curtains for the apocalypse, go ahead and hit that follow button and upvote, because trust me, we are about to burn this corporate ladder down to the studs together. My name is Kimberly, and until this morning, was the senior systems architect for a retail empire that spans 3,400 stores, 3 continents, and about 1 million miles of fiber optic cable that's held together by duct tape and my own anxiety. Most people think the cloud is this ethereal, white fluffy place where data lives happily ever after. It's not. The cloud is a freezing cold basement in New Jersey that smells like ozone and stale Fritos. I've spent more weekends than I care to count patching up code written by a dead man. That dead man was Mr. Vance, the founder. He was a tyrant, a genius, and the only person who understood that you don't build a skyscraper on a foundation of marshmallows. He hired me a decade ago because he caught me fixing a point-of-sale POS terminal at a competitor's store while I was standing in line to buy gum. He liked that I carried a screwdriver in my purse, liked that I didn't smile when he offered me the job, but asked about the benefits package instead. For 8 years, I was the ghost in the machine. I wasn't in the brochures. I wasn't on the Meet the Team page with the smiling marketing interns who looked like they were grown in a vat of pumpkin spice latte. I was the one they called at 4:17 a.m. on Christmas morning when the inventory database decided to commit ritual suicide. I was the one who knew that the entire Northeast regional pricing grid was dependent on a single legacy server named Old Yeller that we couldn't replace because the code was written in a language that hasn't been taught since the Berlin Wall came down. I kept the lights on. I kept the scanners beeping. I kept the money flowing, and I did it by being invisible. But invisibility is a double-edged sword. When things work perfectly, people assume they happen by magic. Forget about the sweat. They forget about the 30-hour shifts during Black Friday prep, where my diet consisted entirely of ibuprofen and vending machine pretzels. They forget that the system isn't a sentient being that loves them. It's a chaotic beast that wants to eat itself, and I'm the zookeeper with the tranquilizer gun. Mr. Vance died 6 months ago. The funeral was a lavish affair, full of people who hated him talking about his vision. I stood in the back, wearing my one good blazer, watching his casket go into the ground. I knew what was buried in there with him, the institutional memory, the handshake deals, the respect for the nuts and bolts of the business. I looked around at the board members, checking their watches, and I felt a cold knot in my stomach. They didn't see a loss, they saw an opening. Enter the sun. Preston Vance, the new COO, 32 years old, teeth whiter than a supernova, a resume that listed visionary as a skill. He had an MBA from a school that costs more than my house and the operational experience of a hamster. He swept into the C-suite like a hurricane of cologne and buzzwords, talking about pivoting, synergy, and disrupting the paradigm. He didn't know what a server was, but he definitely knew he wanted to move them to the next level, whatever the hell that meant. I stayed in my lane. I kept my head down. I updated the security patches. I monitored the thermal loads. I assumed that, like a kidney stone, Preston would eventually pass, or at least settle into a rhythm where he played golf and let the adults run the shop. I was wrong. It started with small things, emails about optimizing the aesthetic of the IT department, memos about energy vampire employees who didn't smile enough in the hallways. I ignored them. I'm not paid to smile, paid to ensure that when a customer scans a pair of jeans, the price doesn't come up as $0 and 0 cents or $4 million. My energy is allocated to preventing catastrophic data breaches, not high-fiving the sales team. But silence, to a man like Preston, is an insult. He needs validation. He needs an audience. And nothing annoys a narcissist more than a woman who looks at him and sees a toddler wearing his daddy's tie. He was in the middle of a delicate database migration, moving terabytes of customer loyalty data from a decaying cluster to a secure sandbox when the summons came. It wasn't an email. It was his assistant, a terrifyingly cheerful woman named Chloe, appearing at the door of my server sanctuary. She wrinkled her nose at the smell of ozone and hard work. "Kimberly, Preston is ready to circle back with you now." "I didn't know we were circling," I said, not looking up from my monitors. "I'm in the middle of code injection. If I stop now, the loyalty points for the entire Midwest might vanish." "Oh, I'm sure it can wait," Chloe chirped. "He's very excited to discuss the new direction." I looked at the scrolling lines of code, green text on a black background, the heartbeat of the company. It was stable, for now. I sighed, saved my state, and stood up. My knees popped. I brushed the dust off my sensible slacks. I grabbed my ID badge, the one that gave me access to every door, every vault, every digital skeleton key in the Empire. "Fine," I said. "Let's go see the direction." I walked out of the cool, dim safety of the server room and into the elevator. As we ascended to the top floor, leaving the hum of the machines behind, the air changed. It got thinner. It smelled less like work and more like expensive lilies and fear. I didn't know it yet, but I was riding that elevator toward the end of my life as I knew it. And the funny thing is, I wasn't the one who should have been afraid. The building wasn't just concrete and glass. It was a digital organism, and I was its central nervous system. You don't fire your own brainstem and expect to keep walking. But Preston was about to try. The doors opened. The carpet was plush enough to swallow my ankles. I walked toward the corner office, one that used to belong to the old man, the one that was now occupied by a boy king with a shiny axe. I took a deep breath. I was ready for a fight about budget. I was ready for a fight about staffing. I wasn't ready for the sheer, unadulterated stupidity of what was about to happen. Preston's office looked less like a place of business and more like the lobby of a boutique hotel in Miami, where the drinks cost $30 and taste like hand sanitizer. Heavy oak desk Mr. Vance had used, the one scarred with cigarette burns and coffee rings, was gone. In its place was a sleek, glass slab that looked like it would shatter if you placed a heavy thought on it. Preston was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline, striking a pose that I'm 90% sure he practiced in a mirror. He was wearing a suit that was too blue and shoes that were too pointy. He turned as I entered, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was a shark smile, all teeth and cartilage. "Kimberly," he boomed as if we were old college buddies and not two people who had exchanged maybe 50 words in 6 months. Come in, have a seat. Do you want a water, a sparkling birch sap infusion?" "I'm fine, Preston," I said, remaining standing. I wanted to keep this short. The code injection was paused, and paused code makes me itchy. "What's the emergency?" "Emergency?" No emergency," he laughed, waving a hand dismissively. He sat down behind the glass desk, leaning back in an ergonomic chair that probably cost more than my first car. "Just a vibe check. A realignment. A realignment," I repeated flatly. "Exactly. Look, Kim, can I call you Kim?" He didn't wait for an answer. "I've been doing a deep dive into the org chart, looking at the energy flow of the company. The Chi of the operation, if you will." I stared at him. "The Chi, yes. We're pivoting, Kim, moving toward a digital-first, customer-centric, joy-forward experience. And to do that, we need a team that embodies that spirit. We need radiantly positive change-makers." He picked up a folder from his desk. It was thin, my personnel file. "I've been looking at your performance reviews," he said, his voice dropping to a theatrical hush. "Technically, flawless. The uptime is good. The security is tight. But..." He tapped the folder with a manicured fingernail. "Culture fit? It's just not there." "I manage the back-end infrastructure for 3,000 stores," I said, my voice steady. "My job isn't to fit the culture. My job is to make sure the credit card terminals don't crash when 10 million people try to buy Christmas presents at the same time." "See," Preston pointed at me as if I'd just proven his point. "That right there, that energy, it's heavy, it's dense. It's a drag, Kim. It brings the room down. We need innovators, need people who say yes and not no, but..." I felt a muscle twitch under my left eye. "You want me to say yes and to a server fire?" "Preston, the systems I manage are 20 years old. They are held together by custom scripts and patches that I wrote. They aren't joy forward. They are binary code and electricity." He sighed, a long, dramatic exhalation of disappointment. "I was afraid you wouldn't get it. Your legacy, Kim. Your analog in a digital world. Bringing in a new firm to handle the IT infrastructure. A cloud-native, agile team. Young guys, hungry, fresh energy." The words hung in the air like a bad smell. You're outsourcing the core network. We're upgrading the human capital, he corrected. Effective immediately. He slid a piece of paper across the glass desk. A severance agreement. Standard package, he said, his smile returning. 2 weeks' pay. A glowing recommendation for whatever it is you do. Today is your last day. I looked at the paper. Then I looked at him. He really had no idea. He thought IT was just plugging things into the wall. He thought the data flowed because the universe wanted it to. Preston, I said very quietly, does the new Agile team know about the continuity logs? He blinked. The what? The continuity logs. The fail-safes your father and I built. The system requires a manual handshake every 24 hours, specific authentication from a master admin account. My account. He rolled his eyes. Oh God, here we go with the technical mumbo-jumbo. They'll figure it out. They're experts, Kim. They have apps, I repeated. The absurdity was almost beautiful. Look, don't try to scare me with ghost stories, he snapped, his facade cracking just a little. This is a business decision. We need to shed the dead weight. We need to be lean. You're fired, Kimberly. Please hand over your badge. I stood there for a moment, processing. I could fight. I could scream. I could drag the CTO in here and explain that Preston was essentially pulling the fuel rods out of a nuclear reactor. But then I looked at his smug, dismissive face. I looked at the live, laugh, love style art on the wall that said hustle. And I realized I didn't want to save him. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my badge. The plastic was worn smooth from years of use. It was the key to the kingdom. Okay, I said. He looked surprised. He had expected a scene. He had expected tears. Just like that? Just like that, I said. I placed the badge on the glass desk. It made a sharp clack. You want fresh energy? You got it. Great, he clapped his hands. Chloe will escort you out. No need to go back to the basement. We'll mail you your personal effects. No need, I said. I travel light. I turned to the door. My hand was on the handle when I stopped. I couldn't resist. Preston? Yeah. He was already looking at his phone, dismissing me. Check the logs, I said. Goodbye, Kim, he muttered. I walked out. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with a strange, cold adrenaline. He had fired the pilot mid-flight because he didn't like the way I announced the turbulence. He thought the plane flew itself. He was about to learn about gravity. Walk from the C-suite to the elevator felt different this time. The plush carpet felt like quicksand. I kept my head high, my face a mask of absolute neutral calm. Inside, however, I was running a mental diagnostic of the immediate future. I stepped into the elevator and hit the button for the lobby. Not the basement, not my office. Preston had said effective immediately, and I am a stickler for instructions. If he wanted me gone, I would be gone. The phantom limb sensation of my work was already itching. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a Slack notification. Then another, then a flood. The rumor mill in a company this size moves faster than light. At Sysadmin Dave, Kim, why is your account showing revoked status? At Network Sarah, did the new guy actually do it? Tell me he didn't. At Ops Manager Mike, Kim, we have a sync error on the West Coast hub. Need you to look at it. I ignored them all. I wasn't the senior systems architect anymore. I was just a middle-aged woman with a purse and a migraine. The elevator doors opened into the lobby, a grand, marble-floored expanse designed to impress investors. I walked toward the revolving doors. But before I could reach freedom, I had to pass the war room, a glass-walled conference area where the junior analysts monitored the dashboards. They saw me. It was like a scene from a submarine movie when the hull starts to groan. 5 heads snapped up in unison. These were kids I had trained. I had taught them how to crimp cables, how to read hex dumps, how to survive on cold pizza. They looked terrified. Jason, a bright kid with a messy bun and a nervous tic, actually ran out of the room to intercept me. Kimberly, he hissed, looking over his shoulder. Security just sent a ping to disable your credentials. What is happening? The dashboard is flashing yellow on the transaction servers. I've been let go, Jason, I said, adjusting my scarf. Fresh energy. You guys are the Agile team now. His face went pale. Agile, we don't know the legacy scripts. The documentation for the 98 server is. Well, it's just you. It's in your head. You'll figure it out, I said, though I knew they wouldn't. Not in time. Kim, he grabbed my arm, desperate. The heartbeat. The dead man's switch. Told me once that the system checks for you. Checks for your specific admin login activity. I stopped. I looked at this kid. He was the only one who had actually listened during my Doomsday Scenarios lecture 3 years ago. You have a good memory, Jason, I said softly. How long? He asked. How long until it notices you're gone? I looked at the giant digital clock on the lobby wall. It was 10:14 a.m. System polls for the primary custodian every 15 minutes, I said. My last authentication was at 10 o'clock a.m. exactly, right before I went upstairs. Jason looked at the clock. 10:14. 1 minute, he whispered. We have 1 minute before it locks down. Not locks down, I corrected him. Locks down implies security. It enters preservation mode. It assumes the custodian is dead or compromised. It severs external connections to protect the core database. It's a feature Mr. Vance insisted on after the Target breach. It disconnects the stores. Jason's voice squeaked. It disconnects everything, I said. Tell Preston I said good luck. I pushed through the revolving doors and stepped out into the bright, blinding sunlight of the parking lot. The air tasted like car exhaust and freedom. Behind me, through the thick glass of the lobby, I saw Jason sprinting back to the war room. I saw him shouting. I saw heads turning. I walked to my car, a sensible 10-year-old sedan. I got in. I didn't start the engine immediately. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, watching the seconds tick by on the dashboard clock. 10:14:58, 10:14:59, 10:15:00. I closed my eyes. I imagined the query flying through the fiber optics, racing from the New Jersey basement to the redundant servers in Nevada and Virginia. Query, custodian auth check, status, null, retry 1, status, null, action, initiate Vance protocol Zulu. The beast had woken up and it didn't find its mother. Now it was going to start breaking the furniture. I started the car. Dark Side of the Moon was in the CD player. I turned the volume up. I had a long drive home, and for the first time in 8 years, didn't have to answer the phone. The drive to my house usually takes 40 minutes. Today, it felt like 5. My brain was split into 2 separate operating systems. System A was driving the car, obeying traffic laws, and wondering if I had any wine in the fridge. System B was back in the server room, visualizing the cascade failure I knew was currently ripping through the network. Preservation mode isn't subtle. It doesn't just turn things off. It quarantines them. Imagine a bank vault that senses a robbery, so it not only locks the door, but also welds it shut and floods the room with concrete. That was the Vance protocol. My phone rang 10 minutes into the drive. I looked at the display. Brenda Regional MGR NE. Brenda was good people. She ran 50 stores in New England with an iron fist and a heart of gold. We had bonded years ago over a shared hatred of the annual corporate retreat. I let it ring, again immediately. I sighed and answered via Bluetooth. Hi, Brenda, I'm driving. Kimberly, what the actual hell is going on? Brenda's voice was tight, vibrating with the specific frequency of retail panic. My registers just froze, all of them. 50 stores, Kim, I have lines out the door. People are trying to buy winter coats and the POS is asking for custodian key. A custodian key, I repeated. That's a new one. Don't give me that calm IT voice, she snapped. I called the help desk and I got a busy signal. I called the war room and some kid named Jason is crying in the background. Then I called Preston's office and his assistant told me to trust the process and reboot. We rebooted, Kim. Now the screens just show a picture of a sad dog. I couldn't help it. A small, dry chuckle escaped my throat. That's not a sad dog, Brenda. That's Mr. Vance's old basset hound, Barnaby, the default screen for system lockout. Why am I looking at a dead basset hound instead of sales figures? Because Preston fired me about 20 minutes ago, I said. Silence. The kind of silence that is heavier than noise. He fired me, for lack of positive energy. He didn't check the handoff protocols. The system thinks the company has been hostily taken over, so it's locking down to protect the data assets. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, Brenda whispered. Kim, you have to fix it. I can't, Brenda. I don't work there. Accessing the system now would be a federal crime. Hacking, unauthorized entry, I could go to jail. The company is losing $50,000 a minute, she said. Probably more, I added helpfully. It's nearing lunch rush. They're blaming you, Brenda said, her voice dropping. There's a company-wide blast email that just went out to management. Subject, system upgrade challenges. It says due to sabotage by a former employee, we are experiencing temporary headwinds. Sabotage, the word tasted like copper. He's calling it sabotage. Yeah, he's throwing you under the bus, backing over you, and then parking on your corpse. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My knuckles turned white. I had expected incompetence. I hadn't expected malice, but I should have. Men like Preston never own their mistakes. They find a witch to burn. Thanks for telling me, Brenda, I said. Do what you can. Go to manual and print if you have the old knuckle-buster machines. We threw those out 5 years ago, she screamed. Then give the customers free coffee and tell them to wait. It's going to be a long day. I hung up. Sabotage. The anger flared up, hot and bright. I hadn't touched a thing. I hadn't written a line of malicious code. I had simply left. I had removed the only thing keeping the chaos at bay, myself. Now he was going to try to paint me as a terrorist because he was too arrogant to read the user manual. I pulled into my driveway. My house was quiet, a modest suburban ranch that I had paid off 2 years ago. I walked inside, kicked off my shoes, and went straight to the kitchen. I poured a glass of tap water. My laptop was sitting on the kitchen table. My personal laptop, not the company one. I sat down and opened it. Didn't log into the company network. I wasn't stupid. But I did pull up Twitter, and there it was. #retail apocalypse was already trending. #Vance stores down. I clicked on a video. It was a shaky cell phone recording from a store in Chicago. A woman was screaming at a teenage cashier because she couldn't buy her yoga mat. The cashier was pointing helplessly at a screen that was completely black except for the pixelated face of a basset hound. At Shop Girl 99, Elmau Vance stores are holding us hostage. Who puts a dog on the checkout screen? Is this a prank? #fail at Tech Bro Steve. Looks like a ransomware attack. Vance stock is gonna tank. I watched the chaos unfold in real time. It wasn't just a glitch. It was a meltdown. And in the glass tower downtown, Preston was probably screaming at Jason, demanding to know why the Agile team couldn't just app their way out of a hard-coded BIOS-level lockout. I took a sip of water. The sabotage accusation gnawed at me. If he wanted a villain, he was going to get one. But not the one he expected. He thought I was the villain because I broke it. He was about to learn that I was the only hero who could fix it, but heroes don't work for free. By 1:00 p.m., situation had graduated from a technical issue to a national news event. I sat on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching CNBC. The ticker at the bottom of the screen was red. Vance Retail Group, VRG, was down 8% in intraday trading. A breathless reporter was standing outside the flagship store in Manhattan. It appears to be a total system failure, the reporter said, pressing an earpiece against the noise of disgruntled shoppers, hearing reports that not a single item has been scanned in over 3,000 locations for nearly 3 hours. Analysts are estimating the revenue loss at roughly $12 million per hour. $12 million. I did the math. Preston's decision to save my $110,000 salary had already cost the company roughly $30 million. The ROI on that decision was looking pretty grim. My phone was now vibrating so constantly, it was essentially walking across the coffee table. Unknown numbers. Area codes from New York, California, Texas. Voicemails filling up. I ignored them all. I was waiting for the one call that mattered. Meanwhile, I could only imagine the scene inside the war room. I knew the architecture of that room better than my own living room. I knew that right now, air conditioning would be struggling to keep up with the body heat of 20 panicked executives, crammed into a space meant for 10. I knew that the Agile team Preston had bragged about, probably some external consultancy firm he had on speed dial, would be frantically plugging in laptops, running diagnostic tools that were completely useless against the Vance protocol. They would be seeing error code, dead man. They would try to bypass it. They would try to force a reboot. Every time they did, the system would interpret it as a brute force attack and dig the trench deeper. It would start encrypting the backups. Around 1:45 p.m., a new notification popped up on my personal email. It wasn't from the company, it was from a burner account. Subject, he knows. From ghostprotocol12@gmail.com. Kim, it's Jason. I'm in the bathroom. It's a bloodbath out here. Preston threw a chair. External guys tried to flush the DNS, and the system responded by locking the warehouse gates. Literally, the trucks can't leave the distribution centers. The gates are electronic and they're dead. The CTO finally grew a spine. He told Preston about the heartbeat auth. He told him it's hard-coded into the kernel. Preston screamed that he wants to sue you. Legal told him they can't sue you for dying, which is what the system thinks you did. They know it's you. Rather, they know it's the lack of you. Stay strong, we miss you. Also, the sad dog screen is haunting my dreams. I smiled. Jason was a good kid. The mention of the warehouse gates was a nice touch I had forgotten about. Mr. Vance was paranoid about inventory theft during a cyber attack. If the brain dies, the body locks up. No product in, no product out. The supply chain was now constipated, but the fear in the email was real. Preston was cornered. Cornered narcissist is dangerous. He wouldn't just admit he was wrong, he would try to destroy me to save himself. I switched back to the news. The headline had changed. Retail giant paralyzed. Insider sabotage suspected. There it was. He was leaking the sabotage narrative to the press. He was trying to frame this as a disgruntled employee holding the company hostage. My stomach churned. This was the abyss. I wasn't just unemployed. I was about to be public enemy number one. I could see the narrative forming. The bitter, middle-aged woman who couldn't handle the fresh energy and decided to burn the house down. I needed to get ahead of this. I needed leverage that wasn't just technical. I stood up and went to my home office. I opened a fireproof box I kept in the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. Inside was a single, red USB drive and a stack of papers. Papers were the original system architecture diagrams, signed by Mr. Vance, and the emails. Oh, the emails. Mr. Vance wasn't just a genius. He was a cynical old bastard who didn't trust his son as far as he could throw him. I pulled out a printed email from 3 years ago. From Vance, SR, to Kimberly S. Subject, the idiot proofing Kim, my son is graduating next week. He thinks he's going to run this place one day. God help us all. I need you to bury the fail-safe deep. Deeper than legal. Deeper than HR. If he ever tries to cut corners on the infrastructure, I want the system to stop him. Make it dependent on you. You're the only one with a head on your shoulders. Consider this your lifetime employment insurance. If they fire you, the lights go out. I'm approving the custodian protocol effective immediately. I held the paper. It wasn't just a job offer, it was a mandate. Preston was screaming about sabotage. I was holding proof that it was actually succession planning. The abyss was staring back at me, but I had a flashlight. The phone rang again. This time, I looked at the ID. It wasn't a random number. Board of Directors Secretary. The sharks were circling. But they weren't calling to attack. They were calling because the water was full of blood and it was their own. I didn't answer. Let them sweat a little longer. The warehouse gates were still locked. I knew I couldn't just sit on the evidence while Preston painted me as a cyber terrorist on CNN. I needed to perform a surgical strike on the narrative. I scanned the email from Mr. Vance. I also scanned the technical addendum titled Operational Continuity Agreement, the custodian clause. It was buried in page 400 of the system manuals, a document no one but me and the dead founder had ever read. I didn't send it to Preston. Sending it to Preston would be like handing a loaded gun to a monkey. He'd just shoot himself and blame the banana. I sent it to Alina Sterling. Alina was the chair of the board. She was 70 years old, wore Chanel suits that cost more than my mortgage, and had a reputation for being about as warm as liquid nitrogen. She had tolerated Preston because of his last name, but she cared about the stock price more than she cared about his ego. I composed a simple email. To Sterling, Alina from Kimberly S. Subject. Regarding the sabotage, Alina, I am watching the news. I understand Preston is characterizing the current outage as an act of malicious sabotage by a former employee. Attached is the authorization from Mr. Vance SR, establishing the Vance protocol. As you will see, the system shutdown is not a hack. It is an automated preservation response, triggered by the unauthorized removal of the designated system custodian. The system is working exactly as designed. It is protecting the company from leadership that lacks the authorized credentials. I did not break the system. Preston unplugged the safety mechanism. I am available to discuss the restoration of services once the accusation of sabotage is publicly retracted. Regards, Kimberly. I hit send. 10 minutes later, imagine the scene in the boardroom. The air in that room would be stale, recycled panic. Preston would be pacing, his tie loosened, sweat staining the armpits of his expensive shirt. He'd be ranting about FBI involvement, about lawsuits, about destroying me. Then, Alina's phone would ping. She would pick it up. She would adjust her reading glasses. She would read the email. Then she would open the attachment. She would see the signature of the man who built the company. She would read the words, "If they fire you, the lights go out." The silence in the room would be deafening. I wasn't there, but I knew what happened next because the news cycle shifted abruptly. At 3:30 p.m., the sabotage banner on the news disappeared. The reporter, looking confused, touched his earpiece. We are We are getting a new statement from Vance Retail Group, are now calling the outage a complex legacy configuration issue and are working with top experts to resolve it. Complex legacy configuration issue. That was corporate speak for we stepped on a rake and it hit us in the face. The phone rang. It was Alina. I picked up on the first ring. Kimberly, her voice was crisp, dry, and utterly devoid of pleasantries. Alina, I replied, matching her tone. We have reviewed the documentation you sent. It appears there was a miscommunication regarding the nature of your departure. A miscommunication, I said. Is that what we're calling firing the system custodian without a handover plan? Preston was rash, she admitted. It was the closest thing to an apology I would get. He did not understand the architecture. He called it bad energy, Alina. He fired the firewall because it wasn't joyful enough. I heard a heavy sigh on the other end. The board is currently in session. The company is bleeding. Have determined that the current IT leadership and operational leadership is insufficient to handle this crisis. That sounds like a problem, I said. It is a problem that requires a specific key, she said. A key you hold. I don't hold a key, Alina. I am the key, that's the difference. You can't just take my password. The system analyzes keystroke dynamics, login patterns, even the timing of my commands. It knows it's me. If you try to log in as admin right now, it will wipe the drives. We know, she said. The external consultants triggered a stage 2 alert. They almost deleted the payroll database. So, what do you want? We want you to come back. Immediately, name your terms. I looked out the window. The sun was starting to set. The shadows were getting long. I don't want to come back to work for Preston, I said. Preston is being managed, she said. Not good enough, I said. Not coming in to fix his mess so he can fire me again next week once the lights are on. If I walk through those doors, the balance of power changes. What do you want, Kimberly? I want a meeting, full board and Preston. In the war room tonight. Done, she said. The car is on its way. I hung up. I went to my closet. I bypassed the sensible slacks. I pulled out a suit I had bought for my mother's funeral. Black, sharp, severe. I wasn't going to fix a server. I was going to perform an exorcism. The black town car waiting in my driveway was a stark contrast to my rusted Honda. The driver opened the door for me with a reverence usually reserved for heads of state or people carrying nuclear codes. In a way, I was both. The ride to headquarters was smooth and silent. I used the time to check the status of the patient. According to Twitter, the outage had now spread to the online portal. Website was displaying a 503 service unavailable error. The stock was down 14%. Shareholders were calling for blood. When we pulled up to the glass tower, it looked like a crime scene. News vans were camped out on the lawn. Security guards were trying to keep cameras away from the revolving doors. The driver escorted me through a side entrance. We bypassed the lobby, which was probably for the best, as I didn't want to see the sad dog screens in person, and went straight to the freight elevator. When the doors opened on the IT floor, the smell hit me first. It wasn't just ozone anymore. It was the smell of stress sweat, lukewarm pizza, and impending doom. The war room was a glass fishbowl in the center of the floor. It was packed. The entire board of directors was there, looking out of place in their expensive suits amidst the tangled cables and empty Red Bull cans. There was Preston. He looked wrecked. His fresh energy had curdled. His hair was messy, his tie was gone, and he was staring at a large monitor that displayed a countdown timer. Vance Protocol, data purge in 015900. Stage 3. If the custodian didn't authenticate in 2 hours, the system would assume the company had been physically compromised and would begin wiping the customer credit card data to prevent theft. It was the nuclear option. I walked in, the room went silent. Jason, my former junior analyst, looked up from a laptop. He looked like he wanted to hug me, but he was too terrified to move. Kimberly, Alina Sterling said, stepping forward. She looked tired. Thank you for coming. I didn't look at her. I looked at Preston. Preston, I said, how's the vibe? He glared at me, his eyes red-rimmed. You did this. You rigged it. I didn't rig anything, I said, my voice projecting clearly across the room. I maintained a security protocol authorized by the owner of this company. A protocol designed to prevent incompetence from destroying the business. It seems to be working perfectly. We don't have time for this, a board member I didn't recognize snapped. Miss Kimberly, can you stop the purge? Miss Kimberly? I raised an eyebrow. This morning, I was legacy dead weight. Please, Alina said. The purge starts in less than 2 hours. If we lose the customer data, we are bankrupt. We will face class action lawsuits in 50 states. The brand will be dead. I walked over to the main terminal. The chair, my old chair, which someone had dragged in from the server room, was empty. I ran a hand over the back of it. I can stop it, I said. It takes 3 commands. I know them by heart. Then do it, Preston shouted. Do your job, I spun on him. I don't have a job, Preston. You fired me. Remember, effective immediately. We will rehire you, he yelled. Double the salary, triple. Just type the damn code. No, I said. The word hung in the air. Excuse me, Alina asked. I don't want a job, I said. I want a guarantee. Because if I fix this and you people go back to business as usual, you'll just wait 6 months until you think you understand the system, and then you'll fire me again. And next time, you'll try to bypass the failsafe. I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I had typed it up in the car. These are my terms, I said. Preston lunged for the paper, but Alina snatched it first. She put on her glasses. She read it, her eyes widened slightly. This is significant, she said. What is it? Preston demanded. Does she want a bonus? Give it to her. She wants a seat on the board, Alina said quietly. And she wants the creation of a new C-level position, Chief Systems Officer, with veto power over any operational decision that impacts infrastructure. What? Preston laughed, a hysterical, high-pitched sound. She's a mechanic. She can't be on the board. And Alina continued, reading the bottom of the page. She demands the immediate resignation of the Chief Operating Officer for gross negligence and endangerment of corporate assets. The room went deadly silent. Only sound was the whirring of the cooling fans and the relentless ticking of the purge countdown. 01:45:00. I crossed my arms. You have 1 hour and 45 minutes to decide, but I'd hurry. The system starts dumping the loyalty backups in 10 minutes as a warm-up. Preston looked like he had been slapped. You can't be serious. Alina, tell her she's crazy. I'm the COO. My name is on the building. Your name is on the signage, I corrected him. Father's name is on the building. And right now, your father's ghost is about to delete 40 years of history because you wanted to save a few bucks on payroll. Alina looked at the paper, then at Preston, then at the countdown timer. She was a cold woman, a creature of finance and bottom lines. She did the calculus in her head. Option A, keep Preston, lose the data, bankrupt the company, lose her fortune. Option B, fire Preston, hire the mechanic, save the company, keep her fortune. It wasn't even a choice. Preston, Alina said, her voice dropping to that terrifyingly calm register. We need to discuss your severance. You're kidding, Preston gasped. He looked around the room for allies. The other board members were studying their shoes or looking at the ceiling. They knew. You're letting the help dictate terms to the board. She's not the help anymore, Alina said. She's the person holding the detonator that you armed. I won't sign it, Preston spat. Won't resign. Then we will vote to remove you, Alina said, right now. Quorum is present. I call for a vote, the board member in the gray suit said immediately. Seconded, said another. All in favor of removing Preston Vance as COO, effective immediately? Alina asked. Every hand in the room went up. Even the guy who had been Preston's college roommate raised his hand, though he looked apologetic about it. Preston turned purple. He looked at me with pure hatred. Planned this? You always wanted my job. I never wanted your job, Preston, I said honestly. I just wanted to do mine. You're the one who made it impossible. Alina pulled a pen from her pocket and signed my demand sheet. She handed it to the other board members. They signed it one by one, passing it around like a treaty of surrender. Finally, Alina handed the paper back to me. It is done, she said. Security will escort Mr. Vance out. Now, please, fix it. 2 security guards, men I had chatted with every morning for 8 years, stepped forward. They didn't look at Preston with deference anymore. They looked at him like a trespasser. Mr. Vance, one of them said, this way, please. Preston looked at me one last time. You're just a glorified janitor, he hissed. Maybe, I said, but I'm the only one who has the keys. He was led out. The heavy glass doors swung shut behind him. The fresh energy had left the building. I looked at the timer, 01:30:00. I sat down in the chair. It molded to my back perfectly. I pulled the keyboard closer. It was a mechanical keyboard, clicky and loud. Jason, I said. Yes, Kim? Miss Chief Systems Officer, Jason stammered. Plug in the hard line to the admin port. Bypass the firewall. I'm going to inject the handshake. On it, Jason scrambled under the desk. I cracked my knuckles. The room held its breath. I typed in the command line. Auth user, K. Stevens admin password, biometric key. Thumbprint scan. I pressed my thumb against the hidden scanner on the side of the terminal, a scanner Preston hadn't even known existed. The screen flashed red, then yellow, identity confirmed. Welcome back, custodian. Aborting purge protocol, restoring external connections. The countdown timer froze. Then it vanished. The sad basset hound disappeared from the main screen, replaced by the beautiful, scrolling green text of the transaction logs coming back online. Store 1042, online. Store 0054, online. Transaction received, $45.50. Milk, bread, eggs. A cheer went up in the room. Not a polite corporate golf clap, but a genuine, guttural roar of relief. The board members were high-fiving the analysts. Inner Sterling actually let out a breath that sounded like a tire deflating. I didn't cheer. I just watched the code stream. It was messy. It was old. It needed a lot of work. But it was alive. I leaned back in the chair. I was exhausted. I was hungry. And I was the most powerful person in the room. The restoration wasn't instant. It rolled across the country like a sunrise. First the East Coast, then the Midwest, then the West. The phones in the war room started ringing, but the tone had changed. It wasn't panic anymore. It was the busy hum of business resuming. Jason popped his head up from under the desk. We're green across the board, Kim. Ma'am. The warehouse gate's just unlocked. Trucks are moving. Good work, Jason, I said. Go get some coffee. You look like you've seen a ghost. I think I saw a resurrection, he muttered, grinning. Alina Sterling approached the desk. She stood next to me, looking at the screens. That was impressive. She said terrifying, but impressive. Mr. Vance built a good ship, I said. He just made sure it wouldn't sail for pirate. I assume you will be making changes, she asked. Many, I said. I want a budget review for infrastructure upgrades by Monday. Real upgrades, not aesthetic ones. We're going to replace Old Yeller before it actually dies. And I want my team rehired, all of them, with raises. Consider it done, she said. She paused. You know, Preston wasn't entirely wrong about one thing. I looked at her wary. What's that? The energy in here was stale, she said. It needed a shock. I just don't think he realized he was the defibrillator. I laughed. It was a real laugh this time. I spent the next 3 hours cleaning up the mess. I purged the Agile team's useless code attempts. I resynced the databases. I sent a global message to every store manager terminal. System alert. Maintenance complete. Operational status, normal. Thank you for your patience. KS. Around 8:00 p.m., the office started to clear out. The board members had gone back to their penthouses. The analysts had gone home to sleep. It was just me and the hum of the servers. I walked back to the elevator, but this time I didn't press the button for the lobby. I pressed the button for the basement. I walked into the server room. The air was cold. The smell of ozone was there, comforting and familiar. Walked up to the main rack, the one housing the core kernel that contained the Vance protocol. You dramatic son of a bitch, I whispered to the machine. You almost killed us. The fan's word in response, a steady, rhythmic beat. I took out my phone. I had one unread message from Brenda, the regional manager. Brenda, the registers are singing, and I saw the news about Preston. You're a legend, Kim. Drinks are on me for the next decade. I typed back, make it wine. A lot of it. I put the phone away. I was the chief systems officer now. I had a title. I had a board seat. I had a salary that would make my accountant weep. But standing there in the cold, listening to the data flow, I knew I was still the same thing I had always been. The custodian, the mechanic, the one who keeps the lights on. The only difference was, now they knew what happens when the lights go out. I patted the server rack one last time. Good night, Old Yeller, I said. I walked out of the room, turned off the lights, and closed the door. The system hummed on in the dark, safe, secure, and finally respected. And somewhere in the city, I hoped Preston was explaining his fresh energy to an unemployment agent. But I didn't dwell on it. I had work to do in the morning. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.